Hoi hoi folks, good morning, good afternoon and good evening wherever you are in the world. My name's Sean, aka Uncle Frogface, and welcome to today's video. If you're new here, then welcome. If you're not new, then welcome back. Yes, it's that time of the month where we return to ScrawlrBox to... bit of rattling there. We return to ScrawlrBox to attempt the ScrawlrChallenge for this month, which is, let me just refresh myself, Organic Origins. There we go. That is our ScrawlrChallenge for this month. So I'm going to go through and use these supplies. We'll have a quick refresher of what everything is first, and so you may also notice I'm a little bit more clean shaven than usual. As I mentioned in my last video, I did a drag act the weekend, so I'm a little bit clean shaven. Maybe I'll pop a little picture somewhere in the video as a little sneak peek of what I looked like in drag. But yeah, I think we will turn the camera around, have a look at the supplies quickly again, and then we'll crack into this month's ScrawlrChallenge, and I'll give you some thoughts about ScrawlrBox in general, this month's supplies, the cost of them, all that kind of stuff as normal. Right, let's get cracking. Okay, well, we've got a very springy box because I haven't packed this back very well, but let's remind ourselves what is in the box for this month. So this is the 90th box, can you believe it? That's a lot of boxes. But we've got our sticker, we've got our piece of artwork, we've got our menu and challenge. I'm going to pop that up there. We've also got, so supplies this month, we have this paintbrushes, Princeton Select Angular Shader Brush. Just there, we have these three Dale Rowney System 3 Fluid Acrylics, and they have a little kind of pipette nib as well. So that's white, blue and yellow. We have this Lyra marker, which is a paint marker. And we have Canson XL textured paper. Interestingly, and I will bring this part up now, let me just move the box out of the way, because it's something that I missed that actually people brought up last time. So it was supposed to be an easy peasy spiral bound 15 sheet pad, and instead we've got a non-spiral bound 10 sheet pad. So it's a third less paper, it's not spiral bound, and yet the price on here is for the spiral bound, not the flat and not the 10-inch one. So I'm just going to point out right now, because I know that is something that I missed out, but obviously I will touch more on that as I go through generally the pricing of this box in total. So as I say, I'm only use the supplies that are in the box. However, I do always allow myself a pencil if there's not a pencil in there, just because I feel like this is a supply everyone has, or at least has access to. And this time I am going to bring in a paint palette as well, which I've given a bit of a clean. This is usually really mucky, but I've bring in paint palette. If you don't have a paint palette, you could just use the ScrawlrBox itself as your palette, so I don't feel too bad about bringing this in to use. And then of course I've got some water as well, because we need that for the paint. Well, don't need it, but that is something that I'm going to be using today anyway. So Organic Origins, that is our prompt for this month. So I have an idea, I think, of what I want to do. I don't know how well it's going to actually translate from idea to finished piece, but that's always the fun of the ScrawlrBox challenges. So I am going to get myself set up a little bit more, just move things a little bit around, and start sketching in what I want to do. Okay, so I said I had a bit of an idea. So Organic Origins, for me, and maybe this is just my science part of my brain kicking in, but it's just like cells and, you know, primordial ooze, and that's really what I'm going to go for here in more of an abstract way. And I think that what we've got in this palette lends more to that than doing something realistic. So that's pretty much what I'm doing. So I'm just sketching out some basic ideas, and then I can elaborate on these a bit further when we actually start using the paints. I'm quite excited by the dotting technique with these paints. Obviously here we have the little pipette nib on them, which is going to be fun to use. But first, we're going to start by laying in all of our base foundation colours. So I'm starting with the blue, and this is going to be the background for the whole piece. So I actually enjoyed using these paints because they're already quite liquid. When you add water to them, you're not really losing a lot of pigment, which I think some acrylic paints, that can definitely be a sticking point, particularly if you're wanting to do washes. You either have to build up a lot of layers or use a medium, which is what I do. I use different mediums so that I can glaze and kind of increase the flow rate of the paint without losing any of the colour and the saturation. So that was nice. I was pleasantly surprised by that. I think it's something I might use these paints for in the future. In fact, I enjoyed that about them so much that I'm tempted to buy some bigger bottles of colours that I use fairly regularly. I think anyone who does art for any length of time, you know that there are a few colours that you always run out more than any other. White and black are definitely on that list. There are a few like magentas on mine for some reason, and purple go very, very quickly. So yeah, I might look into getting some more of these, but it's laying down really nicely on the paper. However, the paper is not liking the moisture content of the paint. Even just from the swatches that I did previously, I kind of knew that this was going to be an issue because the paper buckled pretty much straight away. Once it dried, I could look at the paper and could see dips where I had applied paint before. So I was already apprehensive about that, but the more paint I put onto this paper, the worse it got, honestly. I mean, you'll see as we go through, but there's definitely an issue here, and unfortunately this is not the first time we have had this issue with ScrawlrBox where the supplies don't match the media that we've been given to draw on. It seems to be a recurring theme. The Lyra marker, the paint marker, goes down really well on top of these paints and on paper, but it's just, again, just a little bit mismatched. I'm going to go on to briefly talking about the menu that we got for this. I'm going to slide it over so I can have a look. So the Daler Rowney System 3 fluid acrylics, it says £3.79 each for each bottle. The Lyra Graduate Mark All in black, £3.65. The Princeton Select Synthetic Paintbrush, £4.40. And the Canson Mixed Media Paper A5 Sketchpad, £5.20. So I've touched on the paper briefly already, but yes, needless to say, the paper that we have got in the box is not the paper that is advertised in the zine or on the menu, so the price for that is incorrect. It has to be adjusted by at least a third, and the fact that it is not wire bound as well, it's not spiral bound, also detracts from the cost. Everyone knows that a spiral bound sketchbook or notebook costs more than a glue bound one. So yes, the prices do not match up on that. However, looking at everything else, Daler Rowney, the Lyra and the Princeton brushes, the recommended retail prices that are on here are generally, and I'm saying generally because a couple of them are a little bit off, but generally what they should be in the UK for their RRP, their recommended retail price. However, I went through and looked at several art material suppliers and Amazon, all of those kinds of places as well, people that are just going to kind of mass sell any product. I did not find a single supplier anywhere in the UK that actually sold any of these products for their recommended retail price. Most of them were at least half what the recommended retail price is. So if you go by this is what the products should cost, then the box is value for money. If you go for what the products can actually be bought for in the UK, and I'm specifying this is in the UK, as we know from previous boxes, there have been some suppliers that have been cheaper in different countries, particularly in America and Australia, some that have been more expensive, so always kind of adjust for the products in your own country. And it's always, you know, I've shown you what the prices are, so you can go and have a look and see whether you can get these cheaper in your country. But yeah, there just wasn't anywhere I could find that actually sold them for a recommended retail price. So at least in the UK, for me, this box does not represent value for money, because I could get almost twice the amount for the price that this box costs. I know obviously there are intrinsic things that come with having ScrawlrBox. There's the fact that it is a surprise. There is the Scrawler zine, there's the featured artist, there's the tips and tricks, which all denote a small amount of additional value. And as I say, that's intrinsic because that is a personal thing. The value that you get out of that is the value that you take away from it. So for instance, some of the techniques that are in the Scrawler zine, for me, don't really offer any intrinsic value, because those are things that I do anyway, or that I know. Whereas for new artists who have not had that experience, have not had that exposure, that is more intrinsic value, because those are things that you get to learn and get to experience. So yeah, I go through on a very matter of fact, this is what these things cost basis. Okay, right. So here I am in drag. Let's break up the talking of suppliers with my drag outfit for the weekend. So I was part of a trio that did a Dreamgirls song, and that is the look that we went for, each with a different set of wigs. It was interesting, a lot of fun. I'm sure there'll be videos on the internet somewhere at some point. But right, I've got all of my base colours in now, and I let this dry, and I really let this dry because, as I said, the paper really buckled and really did not like this, and the bottom edge just completely curled over into almost a tube, so I had to bend it all the opposite direction to get it to lay flat again. And now I'm just going through and adding a load of little dots and dabs and all of those little bits you find in cells, strands of DNA, all of those kinds of things. Mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. All those little fun bits, and I'm doing that just with the pipette nibs and the pen. I'm not using the brush at this point. I'm literally just dotting all of these bits down, because not only is it giving variation in colour, it's also giving a variation in texture. And as you move the piece around dry, then these bits are all raised. It gives a raised relief to the whole piece, which is really nice. And really nice of these paints as well. You could build up a lot of texture with these if you spent enough time with them. Texture in paint is an interesting thing, because sometimes you want really thick paint, sometimes you just want to create dots and swirls and all that kind of thing. This is a very dotty, swirly kind of paint. Even going with the yellow straight out of the tube onto where I've varied the colour of the yellows, it just adds a little bit more depth, and I enjoyed this. I will have to say, I did really enjoy this. The white, however, slight issue you'll see in just a moment, in that it kind of in the nib, it had kind of set there from where I used it before, and then when I wiped it away and tried to use it again, we have this mess where the paint inside the bottle had actually separated a little bit. So I spent a few minutes shaking it and just testing it and making sure that I could get the paint to flow nicely. So just something to be aware of. If you have let these sit for a while, just give them a little bit of a shake before using them fully. But yeah, we're almost at the end of this piece, and I've actually really enjoyed doing this. So I'm going to let you enjoy just the last few little swirly bits, and I will join you at the end with a few final thoughts. Okay, and just like that, we are finished. Everything's now dry. Run my fingers over it, it's not going to smudge anywhere. This is the finished piece, and I will leave a more detailed picture of this at the end. But yeah, as I said, I have some thoughts about the supplies, which I've kind of gone through already, and the pricing, stuff like that. But one big thing to point out is this paper. It has buckled so much. I know between kind of doing the washes and then going into some more detail, I had to flatten it out again, but I actually had to take this out of the book because it was buckling so much. It was starting to pull away at the top edge with the glue. But yeah, that's the paper. Obviously we've got the paints there, the paint marker, the brush. I think I like what I did with these supplies. I do like how fluid the acrylic paints are, even though they're Daler Rowney, which kind of have a reputation for sometimes being a little cheaper. But yeah, there's a lot, or seems to be a lot, going on under the surface with ScrawlrBox at the moment. So I think it's a case of watch this space to see what happens. As always, if you've got a recommendation of a different art subscription box that you'd like me to check out, then leave a comment down below and give me your recommendations. Always happy to hear those. As always, I really hope you've enjoyed today's video, and until next time, goodbye.